And welcome to this regular Sunday Dharma talk. This has been going on for quite a number of years, every Sunday morning. So I'm going to read this note. This probably is worded better than I would do if I just jabbered away. Thank you for your generous participation in 2024. We appreciate seeing you, hearing your questions, participating in book study, your financial support, and your help volunteering on the web and translating. So thank you. Appreciate it very much. I think I could have just winged it there and done okay. Maybe, probably not. So today's, is there something else I should be saying? Today's Dharma talk title is I went back and forth with a few different ones, but I just want to be able to address a particular aspect of mind training. So I've titled this with like a question mark, like a question, two words. And that is, what was it?
Destroying
Destroying what?
insanity.
No,
I thought that's what I read on here.
no, it's destroying insanity, like that. You aren't going to be able to do that, although that's just an intense way of saying that the craziness that comes up, maybe you don't think of the things happening in your mind, conflicting emotions about the nature of your life, your experience, what's happening to you, what's happening with anything, with your job, your coworkers, your children. You may just look at that as it settles down and then starts to come apart again, and then it somehow settles down. And so it has the illusion of being able to be repaired or fixed. Just like any circle does, it's always going to return to midnight. The circle's always just going to come around. What's the old saying? What goes around comes around. Pretty damned accurate. It's just when that has to do with your mind stream, where you're fighting with it, actually making it worse, you're not able to actually dance with that movement. And I'm not saying you agree with it. I'm not saying that you have negative feelings and you just need to accept those. You'll never hear me say, if you do, you should call me on it immediately. If I ever say, well, just accept it. I never say that to you. That's not a good approach to anything. Well, just accept it. That's not what be with all things means, which is the third peer precept. What that means is whatever shows up, receive it. No matter how much it smells, no matter how fragrant it is, don't go immediately leave what is showing up for some kind of causation that you think you have the on switch to. You don't control this. If you think you control something, go sit on your butt for 50 years, coming back and talk to me. You don't control this. And no, I'm not going to start yelling at you, and I want to get bad press down the street. There's an evil old man that yells at his students. Guilty. I do. Well, I get frustrated sometimes. I look at people go in the same circle and go around and bang their head into something and come back and say, why does my head hurt? And that's because the causes and conditions that create the First Noble Truths of suffering are invisible. You cannot see them. If you find one, then what do? You try to stop it or fix it or put a Band-Aid on it or cover it up or shove it away, rather than just receiving it. It needs to be received. This is what all these nerve endings are for, is to receive. That's why we hear, why we smell, why we taste, why we touch, why we think and feel. Those are all receivers. Those don't produce anything. So you cannot fix it. I'm not saying there aren't techniques out there that propose to go in that direction, that work with the cause and effect area, like cognitive behavioral therapy. What was that triangle you said? It was, what was the three things you told me about?
Thoughts, emotions, and actions.
Okay, so it's working with the three dynamics in a way that in order to help get more clarity and more awareness around there, but it doesn't, my understanding of it is it doesn't go deeply into it. It has it's a good approach, because the idea is to try to help people deal with that. Maybe that's all you would need. Maybe the karma that brought you into this world is not that rough and raw around the edges. As we know, some people are living just fine and can't, as they get out of their Mercedes and walk to their house, can't understand why everybody's having such a hard time with their life. Because they're doing fine. Well, if they just get a job, or go get a good education. All of that stuff. We've all heard a lot of that. And there's some truth to that. Otherwise, you couldn't even open your big mouth about it. But because of the nature of confusion, the nature of craziness, the nature of insanity, or whatever word we want to use, conflicting feelings, conflicting emotions about the nature of any given thing. Have you noticed how even people in a conversation, you be talking to someone that's a totally sane person, you give them that. I mean, somebody you have breakfast with once a week, and then they say something like, they don't even realize what they're saying when they say, well, a part of me wants this, and then a part of me wants that. It's like saying, this is how crazy I am. I actually am of two minds about this. That's not intelligence. So, of course, that's why I'm here to promote, encourage people to see it yourself, look at it, sit down, hold still, do it for years. Observe what this is. So that when you get up and do sit across the table from somebody and talk to them, when they talk to you like that, you're able to receive that without leaving that for what you think about it. It is so difficult to do, not to judge people. You could say to me, well, aren't you judging people? Yes, I am. I'm aware of it. Are you? Are you? Are you aware that you judge people? Oh, okay.
Sometimes.
Kind of, sort of. How about you guys? No? Yeah?
Always.
Always?
Well,
How about that one time where you didn't?
got there.
Got you there, see? You can be corrected. You need to be fixed. So what I'm always, every time I come in here and talk, I'm always trying to encourage people to be aware of what happens instead of try to fix or change what happens. Because as soon as you start to move into the warp and woof of craziness, or the right and wrong, or the judgment, the evaluation, the prejudice of that, as soon as you move in there and take up any one of those strands as being correct or incorrect, you do anything with that at all, you actually are reinforcing that wall or that shield or that tapestry of otherness that prevents you from seeing, from actually being consciousness only. You could say seeing your Buddha nature, but even that is a misunderstanding. It's just, that's a path description rather than a fruition. Fruition, you don't see anything. If you see something, then you have work to do. I mean that. If you have questions around it, come this way. If you see anything at all, that's confusion. That's the illusion you're deluded by, because you think it's over there. You don't realize that you're looking at the nature of consciousness always, no matter if it shows up as a hand or if a squirrel running through the tree, or the verses that were read at your mother-in-law's funeral. You know what I'm talking about. I'm just going in several different directions. I'm saying every damn thing that shows up is an illusion. That doesn't mean it doesn't, have you right by the ear dragging you around in your life. Of course it does. Or maybe not. Maybe you're one of those people that don't really have that kind of tugging and pulling. Maybe your meditation is clear and pure, as though the sky had melted. Can't be controlled, can't be fixed. But if the urge to fix or control comes up, we don't necessarily want to stop that or short circuit that or try to behave and be better awareness practitioners or better meditators. Just be aware of whatever shows up. It doesn't matter what shows up. The only thing that matters is awareness, the consciousness only. Eventually, if you continue on this path, if you leave the ground of the path of this path, which is suffering or discontent or unhappiness or passion, aggression, ignorance, or the path of liberation or the path of the Buddha, then eventually you will probably, though there's no guarantee, have fruition, which will not be an occurrence. It will not be an event, and you won't experience it. You experience it, as I've said 50 times, if you experience it, you hear it, you see it, but it does not last. Awakening doesn't vanish because it has not appeared. I can continue to talk, or you could ask a question. Up to you.
Milka bowing, when you say anything you see, is it the action that we see that takes us away from what's showing up? Bowing.
It's doing something with that. If you see something and you're watching that and you do something with it, then that's that you've actually joined into the carousel. But if you just watch the carousel, go around, come back and go around, just watch your own emotions get better and get worse and then improve. That's the illusion.
Milka
Called
bowing.
impermanence. Go ahead.
If we understand anything, is this leaving what's appearing? Bowing.
Is it doing what?
Leaving.
If it's a relative understanding, like if you think you practiced all these years and now you finally see the fundamental nature of reality. You mean that?
I don't know.
Spit it out. It's not a bear trap, it's just your old friend.
Milka bowing. What's my old friend?
This guy.
Well, I know that. No.
What I'm saying, it's not a bear trap. I want to help you, but I need to meet you in whatever you're asking me about so that I can respond in a way that could be helpful to you, might be helpful to me, might be helpful to someone that can't even ask that question or doesn't know they would like to know that.
Susan buying. Is awareness of conflicting emotions intelligence?
It's just consciousness. Excuse me, you're just watching the emotions, you get conflicted around something, but as soon as you make a story out of it, even if the story is available, if there's writing material available, if you're ready to start chapter and verse, I'll do it. But if you do that, then just watch that. The process for each person, depending on the karma that shows up as you or anyone here or me or anyone, the process that shows up is so different. That's why there's no protocol for doing this. The only protocol, the only standard that I would even come close to teaching as a standard is hold still and watch what continues to move. That's how I teach Shikantaza. I did not learn that. I did not practice that myself for many years. I taught mindfulness awareness practice to a lot of people for decades. So it's about just being aware of the motion, not the correctness or incorrectness, or so there's no real conflict. But if it feels like there's conflict there, then just observe the conflict. Room for questions there if you haven't.
Susan, right, what's the nature of the conflict?
Ignorance.
Susan, right, ignorance of what?
That wasn't laughter, was it? But it wasn't laughter. So what you said was not funny. What do you want to know?
Susan, right, what is the ignorance that shows up as conflict?
Ignorance of the nature of reality, which is not separate. You ignore that, you create an otherness that you want to get away from, or an otherness that you want to get closer to, or another otherness that you want to distract yourself from. That would be the classical form of ignorance, is distraction. The other form of ignorance is pushing on something just because you're trying to control it, or explaining something, or justifying something, or blaming something because you want to control it, because it reinforces that primary misunderstanding, which is the ego, self-centeredness. Well, you had something? No. Say, Toe, do you have anything? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. No questions.
Okay.
Will come up.
Okay.
You know, Ryan, if awakening is not an occurrence, is it,
Hard to choke that out, isn't it? Not an occurrence of what the hell are you talking about? Gotta occur, doesn't it?
I
No,
can't,
I'm interrupting your question. Pardon me. Please go ahead.
though I am having trouble asking a question without putting a verb in there that means a
It's
happening.
all right, because I can relate with you. You don't have to,
Okay.
you don't have to
Is it-
soft serve it to me.
Is it, is it something that has a quality of continuous
Is what?
appearance, awakening?
No, there's no continuity to it from the point of view of that kind of continuous. Doesn't continue. It doesn't appear, so it can't disappear. It is not an appearance. It is not relative truth, yet it is not separate from relative truth.
You don't mind, do you use awakening and enlightenment in the same way?
Well, they're concepts, and so if somebody says to me, so Sokuzan, you enlightened? And I'm going to say, what do you mean by that? What's your definition? Because I know if I say yes, I'm going to be agreeing with their definition of enlightenment. If I say no, then I'm going to be same thing, disagreeing, agreeing. Yes,
You don't mind when Dogen says practice enlightenment or practice is enlightenment.
yes.
There seems to be some kind of implied continuity. What is he really saying there?
Well, I don't know what he's really saying, and only he really knows what he's really saying. But the teaching there is don't do anything. The closest I could come to it in terms of an action is just sit down and hold still. You still have an eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, just receive. Don't do anything. Live in enlightenment. You already are the Buddha. You're all. Go ahead.
You don't mind, is enlightenment or awakening the same as receiving?
No, receiving is the practice. That's the path. Enlightenment is not a path.
You don't mind, it's also not a state. Is it a,
No more than Canada's a state.
came to a dead end? Thank you.
That could be called a state. Yes.
Beyond bowing, if I were to have a deep understanding of impermanence and just impermanence. How would my life be different?
You'd be suffering more. You wouldn't be able to shut out any of the suffering. Right now, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm kind of talking about everyone here. Most of us are suffering is coming and going. I'm sure you've noticed, maybe since you were born, sometimes you're suffering and things are suck, and then they get better for a while, and then they get worse and they get better. And the path is like that also. As we go along the path, we notice that we quite often on a path, what happens, we tend to feel worse. And then sometimes people even feel like if they're feeling worse, they should maybe do something else where they feel better, because they misunderstand the path as a path of gratification or feeling good or being holy or something. So it could get worse. I'm not saying that will happen, but it's a very good possibility that if you've spent most of your life or lifetimes hiding out from your true nature, then you might have to have several passages to go through that are thick as oak trees. It's that kind of a forest, but do it anyway. You can do it. The only thing that can really go through an oak tree is consciousness. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't saw the tree down, but it'll grow back. More about it if you haven't. It's a good area to ask him.
Beyond bowing, I started wondering about, you said that I would be suffering more.
There's a possibility.
Um. What are the other possibilities?
What are the others?
Yeah,
Just everything's kind of flat. Another one is maybe bored more. Maybe less, could be less activity. And also you could get really involved in some kind of activity that looks like an accomplishment activity. You're doing something when actually that's a way of covering up the suffering. That's a possibility. There are people who cover up their suffering by just cleaning house a lot. They're extremely neat, because they clean. Doesn't mean not against cleaning a house or being neat, but it's when that's used to do that. And you could actually see what that is and still continue to keep things clean and polished and everything, and not quite use it so much as a cover up. If you're doing a lot of sitting meditation, sit down, hold still, face a dirty wall. When I say a dirty wall, I don't mean the wall. I'm talking about the nature of consciousness, conflicting emotions, like a dirty wall. Go ahead.
does anything anywhere have a permanent nature?
Permanent what?
Nature?
No. Not how it seems here. There's the otherness has gone out of everything. So there's just consciousness only, which is Buddha nature. And you could say it's permanent because it doesn't show up. So it can't really go away. If something shows up, then it can go away. But if nothing shows up, no.
I'm wondering if you can define insanity. What are you referring to when you use the word insanity?
How you sometimes act. No one's laughing but you. How we all we fight with ourselves. We have 2 things, 3 things going on, and we start to opt for something that's going to give us some kind of temporary security or feeling of security, even though we can kind of see that this is not going to have a good outcomes, but we kind of do it anyway. And there's just such a labyrinth of otherness happening, where we're picking and choosing and sorting and talking to others about it, trying to get people on board to go along with our particular idea. And then when they do, we decide we really want their help. We don't want them there. We want to be understood. We want You say, kind of say, sometimes we want company, something like that, perhaps. Is that what you're asking about?
What about in relationship to sanity then? What would be sanity? Can we be sane and be on the path bound?
Yes. Basic sanity is just, it's just like everything has a flat bottom. Everything is sitting. No matter how much it's running this way or running that way, everywhere you look to see the Buddha, not the personhood of a Asian character from 2,500 years ago. You see the Buddha nature, awakened nature, awakened truth. You actually see it with your own perception. And it is like looking in a mirror. It doesn't give you a credential, like it doesn't make you particularly feel like you've accomplished some great thing. Might be just the opposite, could be extremely disappointing.
Divine, is that possible while we're still on the path, or is that fruition only?
It's the karma that shows up there, as long as there's a living form, then that can show up lots of different ways. I feel that both of my teachers, Trungpa Rinpoche and Kobun Roshi, I feel like they were both awake. But who am I to say? I don't know. It felt like it to be instructed by them in the way that they did it. Some of it I had to look back on because I didn't understand it at the time. But some of the way they were living their lives, if you were to judge it through relative means or cultural means, you would say they were outlandish or crazy or did not agree with the social mores of the time. Well,
Divine, when you say destroying insanity, then are you saying that what we're trying to do is destroy our belief in a solid self?
I think there's something, I would back up to the part where we feel like something's wrong, something's crazy. We keep going in circles. We look for help. We might go to a therapist. We might even just listen to a lot of music or immerse ourselves in something that's pleasurable or something that gives us a little bit of an escape hatch. I think I gave a talk recently called Escape into Consciousness, didn't I? It's kind of an escape. It's like there's a lot of room in consciousness only. There's not much happening there. And you could actually do that by watching the space. You can't actually see space if you haven't noticed, but watch what occurs, watch what moves, and notice the space that it moves in, because that doesn't come or go. So consciousness is, the nature of consciousness is like that space until you fill it full of your greed, your hopes, your fears, your junk, your pushing, your pulling, your insanity, your conflicting emotions that you're trying to sort out or get right or get the right emotion. What's the right thing to do? There is no right thing. But we will, even people who've been practicing for many, many years will go after people who are not doing anything to them all. That will go after them hammer and tong to punish them and make sure they're repentant or something. And they haven't done anything. It's not that they didn't maybe look askance or just roll their eyes at them or something like that. Of course, they might have done that. Maybe they did it. Maybe they did that 10 times. But as I've said before, I'll say again, no one's pouring feelings into you. If you're having any feeling about anything right now, that is yours, not yours, the ego, but the consciousness that is showing up any one of these living beings. This living being that you think is so real that you put to bed every night and you get up in the morning and you dress and brush your teeth and do whatever else you do. And if you're young, that's probably going fairly easy. It gets more and more difficult, if I may say. But that's unreal. You're actually grooming an illusion Go ahead, pin up your hair. Go ahead and shave your head. Do that too. Anything you do is changing the shape of that illusion. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you shave your head, doesn't matter if you become a monk, doesn't matter if you meditate, doesn't matter if you sew a rock suit. Doesn't matter. It matters if you're aware. And you won't know you're aware because there is no credential there. There's no conclusion of finally I'm aware for all these times of having my head up my butt. It's finally, it's some fresh air. That was really 28 years of that. Finally, I can breathe. And I'm speaking, silly and making fun of the whole thing, but it's painful stuff to not know that you're deluding yourself. And it's without two powerful teachers, because I'm so insanely self-centered. There's no way I could have done this myself. But I had to be able to receive this from them. And it's not good. It's not comfortable to receive something from someone that feels like they don't like you, they disrespect you, and they think you're nuts. And think you're not worth them even talking to. Won't even answer the phone. Very hard not to take that personally when you just ask for their help. But that's the very teaching I needed because of my self-centeredness, because of my desire to be liked by, in that case was with Coben. I've talked about that probably 100 times by now. It's very painful, but I needed that help, or I certainly wouldn't be sitting here presuming to tell you anything at all. Son,
He's on bowing. When there's a situation where a feeling arises as a result of an interaction with, say, my spouse, I'm hearing very clearly today. No one's pouring feelings into me. They're arising in consciousness.
yes,
And you often say, if I were to say, what should I do with that? I know sometimes you say, just eat it.
sometimes.
So I'm going to ask you today, what should I do with that, with those feelings?
You hungry?
They didn't taste very good.
Well, that's probably a good sign, though. I mean, as far as there's such a thing as good signs, but it's about receiving it. Eating it is kind of a crude way of saying it, but sometimes we might have to say that. As I sometimes say, be whatever you're trying to get rid of or stop or change or destroy. Try being that for 20 minutes. Try just, when I say try that on a little bit. How does it feel? What is that like to just no longer fight with that? This is the beginning of humility. I mean, it won't be humility because that's not a state you can attain. It's not a state, but it's the beginning of just receiving everything that comes your way, not by way of torturing yourself into some kind of a highfalutin superior being who's able to transcend everything and not believe their thoughts and all of that other baloney. But you could work with it. I think it's different with each person. If you're really doing that, your spouse will not necessarily ever know about it. It would be your practice that you would be working with. You would not necessarily have a conversation with them about that. That being said, you may. I mean, say there's situational where you might discuss that. And just because your partner is a meditator, also not necessarily to discuss your personal practice with them. There again, coming all the way back around, it's situational. Some people you would really talk to a lot about your practice. Very situational. More about that?
He's unbowing. If trying that on, so is that, the story I'm telling myself, whatever accusation it is, trying that on as though it were true? Is that what trying it on means?
I think you're going to have to do it. It's, you could also say, insofar as you can let anything happen, because we have conflicting emotions, but whatever the feeling is coming up, don't leave the feeling for who caused it, for thinking about who caused it. Don't leave the feeling for anything other than just how it feels. So if you are doing that, you will not really know, you might not even know whether it feels good or bad. You'll just know that it's intense.
Hmm.
I heard a response that was something like, did that mean it's like angel food cake?
Well, the response was, I heard your voice in my head saying, just feel the feeling, don't name it, don't do anything with it.
If you can, if you
I
can.
don't, I probably didn't actually do that, but that's,
Well,
tried.
well, there it is. It's about the intention. It's not about the accomplishment. Just return. You don't have to maintain any kind of disciplined personhood. Just come back, just return every day, return again and again to see the truth yourself. You can do that. You may need the Buddhist path. You may need a lot of feedback from me. You may not need any. I'll leave that up to you.
So if I'm just feeling the feeling, does the sting eventually just dissipate?
So you've heard me respond in this way before. This might sound a little bit disappointing, but it's, I'm talking out of what I'm looking at, and you won't care. You won't care how you feel. As long as you care how you feel, you're going to act as if you're a real person with real feelings that need to be gotten rid of or justified, or you need to find the causation so you can find an off switch. If you realize your true nature, you will not care how you feel. I mean, that doesn't mean you won't feel it intensely. And it doesn't mean that you won't be extremely concerned with everyone else and all of their feelings. But that doesn't mean they'll even know about it. They may think you're ignoring them or mistreating them. I've had several students feel like I mistreated them when I intended to point out a couple of things about them, just because the way I did it was not particularly polite.
Thank you.
Yes.
Beyond bowing. Is there anything sweet about the raw negativity?
Anything sweet?
Yeah.
I think it's sweet that you realize that pain and pleasure are not two separate things. You're no longer at war. You know, you realize deeply the nature of suffering, and you realize the nature of pleasure, and that they're not separate things. Therefore, you're not concerned about how you feel. Your realization goes way beyond the grasping, the rejecting, and the shutting down, and way beyond any kind of personhood who has a particular interest in anything happening. You're not concerned with outcomes.
Does pain always arise with pleasure?
Yes. Does.
Why does it, why can't it be seen then?
Why can't it?
Yeah.
Because you're squinting your eyes.
Where is the pleasure when the pain arrives?
It's right there. It's not, they're not separate things. Here's the pain, here's the pleasure. It's that same warp and woof again. If you want to take them apart, you can find pain and you can find pleasure. But ultimately, fundamentally, they're not two separate things. An example I've given before, which is a little misleading because it's not exactly like that, but it's like if you cross your palm with a sharp ice pick or something like that, it's gonna hurt. If you cross the same nerve endings, you cross it with a feather, it's going to tickle. So same nerve endings, different kind of treatment is happening there. But it's a way of talking about it. That doesn't mean that you can break it down so that all those polarities are going to show up as ice pick and feather. But similar in that the nerve ending, especially in the mind stream, there is no nerve ending in the mind stream. That's in consciousness only. But that's where the most suffering happens. I'm sure you've noticed. I'm sure all of you have noticed. Quite often, we might have said to ourselves, we'll take on all the physical pain, but take away this mental disturbance or anguish because it's so difficult, horrible, threatening, painful, sometimes making us want to leave this body prematurely.
So what makes it look like pain and pleasure are two different things?
Ego. So you're here, you're a woman, you have your hands like so, sitting here, and you, are you 35? 36? 36?
Mhm.
No, you're not. 37.
Yeah.
More? But anyway, you're here and there's a whole lot of relative truth to this. You have a daughter, Ruby, and you interact with her. That validates your separation into this illusion as some real person in a lifetime. The whole world's doing this. Eventually you see that everywhere you look, that any person you look at, you can see by looking at them for a minute or two that they're immersed in this illusion and they believe their lifetime. They believe that they're actually here and that they're a living being. And it's not that they are not that, it's just that that's an illusion. And their true nature is not seen. Well,
Thank you.
anyone else, especially someone who has had no question yet? Okay, a person who's had 5 questions. Look at how you've had 5 questions already. You don't have one?
I don't know how to ask.
Hmm?
I don't know how to ask it.
Start it.
Choco bowing. When you talk about you won't see anything,
Yes,
and then you also talked about it's like looking in a mirror
yes.
or seeing yourself everywhere.
Mhm. That's still path. Okay, I just want to step in to help you in that area. Not seeing anything is a way of talking about fruition, but it still has a path quality.
Choco bowing, are the perceptions still receiving when you're not seeing anything?
Yes, they may be doing anything, including chopping wood.
And then is it like you don't know? There's a not knowing of what's being
It's
received?
the way of talking about it in a relative way is to say it's like a not knowing something. It's not knowing what you're doing. Not knowing that you're being hogs. It's just like you're doing it, but it's something you're doing all the time. You're doing that, you're repairing the siding, or you're doing so many different things. You're mopping up the floor where water's been spilled. I hope it's water. Yeah. Water. More?
Yeah, choco bowing. Do things make sense?
Pardon me?
Do things make sense?
No. Oh, they don't make sense.
Thank you.
No, when you get into the area where you're seeing all the interstices or gaps or spaces between those things that show up that create the illusion, these things go away, the things that show up. When you begin to see the spaces between everything, then it just does not work. This is impossible if this could even happen. Yes, sir.
Question on YouTube from Jamie Bowing. Are we just supposed to receive our non-virtue?
Yes. Yeah, stop improving. I'm not saying there aren't teachers that teach differently and teach it, and if you have a teacher like that, stay with them, stay with her, stay with them, stay with that teacher. But your teacher, stay with them. Get their help. No wonder, I'm not here to correct anybody. I'm not trying to gather a bunch of students at all. So receive. That's, since you asked the question, you turned me into a teacher for a couple of seconds, and I say, just receive. But if that doesn't work for you, and if you think you need to do something else with the non-virtue, then maybe you need another teacher. Yes, sir.
Jim Bowling, what's crazy about being of two minds of something?
What's crazy about that
Mm-hmm.
is because there's not even one mind.
Doesn't it show us that?
Pardon me?
Doesn't it show us that?
Yeah, but you don't understand it. Yeah, but. You don't understand it. You think there's a right thing. You think there's a one. Have you noticed that? Part of me wants this and a part of me wants that. I don't know if you've ever said that, but something similar to like you're trying to make a choice. Anytime there's a either or, that's the very nature of duality, and the very nature of illusion is the either or. Thinking that you know enough about any damn thing to make a correct choice. Like the whole whether do the right thing. Yeah. Do the right thing. I have some things to say about the people who do the right thing, but I'm not going to say that because that would be doing the wrong thing. And then that's not that I'm not taking away relative truth and saying just live in some kind of highfalutin castle in the sky. But I'm saying you can actually have your feet right on the ground, deep in the muck of samsara, and your consciousness is nowhere to be found. Has no location in time or space, even though there's still a human form working its way towards what? Sickness, aging, and death, the 12 links on the chain of existence. But you don't care what happens because you know it's an illusion. For a long time you didn't know, now you know. You're not concerned with outcomes because you know that that's an illusion. You may have to die to realize that nothing has happened. If you find out what this is before then you may not even die. What's that old saying? We've been saying that to each other forever. Dying is optional. Oh, wait a minute. I think that's on another planet. That's by alien lizards. Another one?
Jim Bowling, is there a way to use that being of two minds of something as a pointer or assistance on the path? No?
I feel like you're going in an area that could be important, but I think I might be missing what it is you're looking for.
It seems like it, by looking when we are aware that we're of two minds of something, and it could help point to the lack of a solid self. And I guess just using that as a device to.
Yes, and that would happen if you're on the path, and this is going to show up all the time. More and more kind of a stark reality that you're opting for this or that, and it becomes more and more obvious that you're deliberately wallowing in confusion rather than seeing clearly. If you see clearly, you won't make choices. You'll know what to do next because you know that all the information you need to do anything is available right now. If it's not, and you think there are two opposite things, then wait. It's called patience. Don't do anything unless you have to. Just sit there for 10 minutes, maybe 10 years, but sit there and look at it. Be respectful of the thing that shows up as your confusion in your life. Don't jump into the confusion with your toolkit of preparedness about how you should do this and do that. You need to do this. You need to apply this or apply that. Not that a little of that couldn't show up, possibly, but basically awareness seems to be what is important in that area more. So just to go back into that, if you came and said, and you presented, which we've talked about things projects you're doing or things that are happening, if you came and presented to me an either or kind of situation, have you done that before? Yeah, what do I do about it?
You either say wait or you. I don't know.
I don't do much.
No.
I'm waiting for you to do that. Am I waiting? I don't know if I'm waiting, but I really know that you need to see that rather than you need to have some old man tell you stuff like some kind of a parent. So I know that you need to see it. And I can tell by your question that you've been looking at this for quite a while. Not about right or wrong. It sure looks like it sometimes though. The whole world is run like that. Our societies run like that. We instantly judge others. It gives us the illusion of controlling things and being in charge. Is there a final question in here? Is there a final question on Zoom? You guys just gonna sit out there? Come on, Sarah. Cough it up.
Sarah bowing. Sarah sitting out here. Um, I I trip a little on when you say don't accept but receive, because to me those things are synonymous. Are they different to you?
Yes.
How? What's the qualitative, like,
Well,
what's the difference?
the difference is if you're looking at a cloud, you just receive it, but you don't have to accept it. You don't have to agree with clouds. You're not even presenting an issue. You don't have a choice about clouds or about hail or rain or sunshine. You just receive it. Just receive it. You don't put yourself in charge of it. Well, I think I'm going to receive the weather or something. So I will say they're very closely allied, but the ego mind, the part of consciousness that is tied up in a self, that quite often is not quite so relaxed in this area, is having a great deal of difficulty in that area of accept and receive, wants to use accepting something to get rid of the difficulty or the stress or the pain. So don't do it. Just receive everything, no matter how it feels. And then if you can really do that, clearly you won't have much of a comment on it. You won't necessarily, there won't be much else happening. It'll just rain, or the hail will just hit you on the head till you get to your oak tree. So it's very, very situational all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yoka bowing. Question on YouTube from Christina. Is part of the Bodhisattva path to intentionally stay with the ground of suffering?
Well, that's quite an abstraction. Stay with the ground of suffering. It's pretty hard to get away from it, especially if you're a meditator. And if you're talking about the Bodhisattva vow, you probably are a meditator. So I would just say whatever shows up, receive it without comment. Get no credential for it, and get no demerit for rejecting it. Nothing happens. It's just whatever arises in consciousness, just observe that. What was the name again?
Christina
Christina.
with a handle of Mary W. Merry.
Not sure. Okay, so I think we're at the end of our allotted time span, where things usually come to a screeching halt, as my stepdad used to say. Well, you guys know what to do next. What do we do next?
Well, stand and dedicate the merit.
Okay.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi fu shi son bu sa moko sa moko no bi. The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.
Thank you, Sokuzan.